Let me ask you something. Have you ever asked someone a question in English, heard them say sure or okay, and walked away thinking everything was fine, only to later realize it really wasn't?
Yes, and what's frustrating is that, technically, nothing was wrong with the words, but something still felt off.
Exactly, because in English, some of the most common words carry meanings that aren't in dictionaries. And if you miss those meanings, you miss the message.
That's why learners often say, I understand English, but conversations still surprise me. It's not the vocabulary, it's what's underneath the words.
And that's actually why this podcast exists. Welcome back to the show where we break down how English is really used in real conversations. Not textbook English, not perfect English, but the kind people use every day at work, with friends, and in real life.
Exactly. This is for learners who already know English, but want to sound more confident, more natural, and more comfortable when they speak.
Each episode, we take small words, common phrases, or everyday situations, and we unpack what they actually mean, how native speakers use them, and how you can respond without overthinking.
Because once you understand these hidden layers, English stops feeling unpredictable and starts feeling human.
And today's conversation is a perfect example of that. We're looking at words you hear constantly. Sure, okay, yeah, and why they don't always mean what you think they mean.
If you've ever felt confused after hearing one of those words, you're definitely not alone.
So let's start by understanding why these small words matter so much in the first place. Before we break down each word, let's talk about why these tiny responses matter so much. Because for many learners, this feels unfair. You learn vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and then a three-letter word suddenly becomes complicated.
Exactly, and the reason is that English, especially spoken English, relies heavily on implied meaning. Native speakers often avoid being direct. Instead of saying no, they soften it. Instead of saying I disagree, they signal it indirectly.
Right. English culture, particularly in professional or polite settings, values emotional comfort. People don't want to sound rude, confrontational, or negative, so they use neutral words like sure, okay, or yeah as emotional buffers.
And learners usually interpret those words literally. Sure means yes, okay means agreement, yeah means confirmation. But in reality, tone, speed, and context completely change the meaning.
This is why misunderstandings happen. You think a plan is confirmed, but the other person thinks they gave a polite non-commitment. You think feedback was positive, but it was actually lukewarm or hesitant.
And the problem isn't your English level. It's that textbooks don't teach this layer. They don't teach you what people mean when they don't want to say something directly.
Exactly. Once you understand this, conversations start making more sense. You stop taking every word at face value and start listening for signals.
And the good news is, you don't need perfect fluency to understand these signals. You just need awareness.
So now, let's start unpacking the first word. Sure, because this one causes more confusion than almost any other. Alright, let's start with sure. On paper, this looks like one of the easiest words in English. Short, simple, positive. Most learners are taught that sure means yes. End of story.
But in real life, sure is one of the most emotionally flexible words in the language. And honestly, it's one of the most dangerous ones if you take it literally.
Exactly, because sure can mean enthusiastic agreement or reluctant acceptance or polite hesitation or even passive resistance.
Let's give an example. Imagine you say to a colleague, "Can you review this document today?" If they respond with sure, said quickly with energy, that's a real yes.
But if the response is slower, like sure, with a pause, that's a completely different message. That often means I don't really want to, but I feel pressured.
Right. And then there's the neutral. Sure. Flat tone, no enthusiasm. That usually means I'll probably do it, but it's not a priority.
And here's where learners get confused. Because no one explains this, you hear sure, you think commitment. But native speakers are listening for tone, not the word.
There's also strategic sure. This is when someone uses sure to avoid conflict. They don't want to say no. They don't want to argue. So they say sure and mentally disengage.
Which is why following up matters. If someone says sure without enthusiasm, it's smart to ask, does that timeline work for you? Or should we adjust the deadline?
Exactly. Sure isn't a promise, it's a signal. And the signal depends on how it's delivered.
And now that we've exposed sure, let's move to an even more subtle word. Okay. If sure is confusing, then okay is on another level entirely. Because okay doesn't just respond to ideas, it responds to authority, emotion, and comfort.
Yes, and this is where a lot of learners misread situations, especially at work. They hear okay and assume agreement, but very often it just means acceptance, not enthusiasm.
Exactly. Let's say a manager says, "We'll need to stay late tonight." If the response is okay, that doesn't mean the person is happy about it. It means I understand, and I'll comply.
Right? That okay is about hierarchy. It's not emotional approval, it's acknowledgement. And that's an important distinction.
But okay can also signal mild disagreement. When someone says okay with a pause or downward tone, it often means I don't fully agree, but I won't argue.
And then there's okay as emotional distancing. A short, flat okay can mean I'm done with this conversation, especially in text messages.
This is why okay in writing can feel cold. One word, no punctuation, no emoji. It can completely shut down a conversation.
Learners often use okay because it feels safe, but overusing it can make you sound passive or disengaged.
The good strategy is to upgrade okay when you actually agree. For example, okay, that makes sense. Or, okay, I can do that by Friday.
Exactly. Adding just a few words turns okay from neutral compliance into clear communication.
And now, let's talk about the most casual and maybe the most misunderstood word of all. Yeah. Now, let's talk about yeah. This is one of those words learners hear constantly but rarely feel confident using.
That's because yeah lives almost entirely in tone and timing. On its own, it doesn't tell you much. How it's said tells you everything.
Exactly. A quick, upbeat yeah signals agreement and engagement. It often appears in friendly conversations and shows you're actively listening.
But a slow or distracted yeah can mean, I hear you, but I'm not fully interested. Or even I don't really agree, but I don't want to interrupt.
And then there's the multitasking. Yeah. Someone scrolling their phone, half listening, saying, yeah. That's not agreement, that's dismissal.
Learners often avoid yeah because it feels too informal. But native speakers use it to sound relaxed and natural. Using yes all the time can actually sound stiff or overly formal in casual settings.
Right. Think of yes as structured and yeah as relational. Neither is better. It depends on context.
A good rule of thumb is this. Use yes in formal or professional situations. Use yeah in friendly, relaxed conversations. Avoid using yeah alone when clarity matters. Add information.
For example, yeah, that works for me. That sounds clear, engaged, and confident.
Exactly. One word plus a small follow-up removes ambiguity.
So now we've unpacked sure, okay, and yeah. The final step is learning how to respond intentionally instead of automatically. So now that we've broken down sure, okay, and yeah, the real question becomes, what should you actually do with this information?
The key lesson is this. Don't respond on autopilot. These words are not wrong, but they're incomplete. Confidence comes from intentional responses, not default ones.
Exactly. When you answer with just sure or okay, you leave room for interpretation. Sometimes that's fine, but when clarity matters, it's better to add one extra layer.
Think of it as upgrading your response. One additional phrase can change everything. Instead of sure, say sure, I can do that today. Instead of okay, say okay, I understand the plan. Instead of yeah, say yeah, that sounds good to me.
This does two things. First, it removes ambiguity for the listener. Second, it makes you feel more in control of the conversation.
And that control reduces anxiety. You're no longer guessing what others think. You're guiding the meaning of your own words.
Another powerful habit is checking understanding. If someone responds with a flat sure or okay, don't assume. Ask a follow-up. Does that work for you? Should we adjust anything?
That's confident communication, not aggressive, not overthinking, just clear.
Exactly. These small words aren't the problem. Unclear intention is. Once you control that, English conversations become much easier.
And honestly, more human.
Well said. Before we wrap up, I want you to pause for a second and think about how often you hear words like sure, okay, or yeah every single day. After this episode, you'll never hear them the same way again.
Exactly. And that's the real win here. Not memorizing rules, but noticing patterns. Once you start listening for tone, timing, and context, English becomes much clearer and much less stressful.
And remember, confident English isn't about using big words, it's about using small words intentionally. One extra phrase, one clarifying sentence. That's often all it takes to sound calm, clear, and professional.
So this week, try one thing. When you catch yourself saying sure, okay, or yeah, add one more thought. Guide the meaning instead of leaving it open.
And in the next episode, we're going even deeper into hidden meaning. But this time with full sentences people think are polite, but actually aren't.
We'll talk about phrases like we'll see, that's interesting, and let's touch base, what they really mean, and how to respond without sounding awkward or confused.
If you don't want to miss that, make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you in the next conversation.
Thanks for listening, and keep noticing the language around you.